The evening sunlight was fading behind the tall maple trees outside Clara Matthews' home, leaving warm orange shadows across the living room floor. Clara had just returned from work, still carrying her coat over one arm, when she noticed someone sitting quietly on the couch. At first, she thought her son Andrew was home early, but when the figure stood, she recognized the familiar face of Ethan Collins, Andrew's closest friend since middle school. Ethan seemed nervous the moment she stepped in. He rose too quickly, nearly knocking over the water bottle on the coffee table. Clara offered a polite smile, expecting the usual cheerful greeting he always gave her. But instead he only nodded, as if he was afraid any sudden movement would draw attention to whatever he was hiding. "Hi, Clara," he said carefully. His voice carried a tightness she hadn't heard before. Clara set her coat down and glanced around, noticing the quiet. The house rarely felt this still. "Where's Andrew? Isn't he with you?" "He stepped out to pick something up," Ethan replied, his eyes shifted away in a nervous flicker. "He said he'd be back soon. He asked me to wait here." That wasn't unusual, but there was something different about Ethan tonight. Clara had known him since he and Andrew were 13, awkward, talkative, full of jokes. They used to run through her kitchen like a pair of tornadoes, demanding snacks, arguing about video games, and laughing loud enough for the neighbors to hear. But lately, Ethan had changed. He had grown quieter, more thoughtful, almost distant. When he visited, he always seemed to hesitate around her, like he wasn't sure how to act. Clara tried to ignore the feeling, but the atmosphere tonight made it impossible. There was a weight in the room, something unspoken and strange. Ethan wasn't just waiting for Andrew. He looked like someone who had been sitting alone with his thoughts for far too long. She sat across from him, noticing how he kept squeezing his hands together. His shoulders were tense. His breathing sounded uneven, like he was preparing himself for something difficult. Clara's instincts sharpened. She wasn't just a mother. She had a natural ability to sense when someone was carrying emotional trouble. "Ethan," she said gently, "you look like something's bothering you." The moment the words left her mouth, he froze. His eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in recognition, as if someone had finally said what he had been trying to hide. He tried to brush it off. "Oh no, I'm fine," he said too quickly. "Just tired. Long day." But Clara knew better. She had raised a teenage son. After all, she knew the difference between real exhaustion and emotional overload. Ethan's expression held something deeper, something fragile. His gaze flickered back to her for a second, and the look he gave her was mixed with confusion, fear, and something else she couldn't quite understand. She leaned a little closer. "Ethan, you've known me for years. You don't have to pretend." Her calm tone made him swallow hard. He looked down at his hands, unable to speak. Seconds passed. The air felt heavy again, but now Clara understood that it wasn't awkwardness. It was build-up. Something was sitting on his chest, something he had carried for a long time. And tonight it was too heavy to hide. He took a slow breath, as if pulling courage from places he didn't know he had. Clara watched him closely, and for the first time, she realized how much he had grown. He wasn't the boy who used to come over asking for Andrew's math notes. He was older now, standing on the edge of adulthood, struggling with emotions that were new, complicated, and overwhelming. "Are you having trouble at school?" she asked softly. "No," he whispered. "Is it something at home?" He shook his head again. Clara hesitated, then asked the question that surprised even her. "Is it something about Andrew?" Ethan's eyes snapped up, startled, but he quickly shook his head. "No, nothing like that." Then what was it? Why did he look like someone on the verge of confessing something that scared him? A quiet moment stretched between them. Clara didn't push him. She didn't judge. She just waited, with a calm presence that made Ethan's heart beat faster, not in a romantic way, not in a forbidden way, but in a deeply emotional way. He felt seen, heard, and safe in a way he hadn't felt with anyone else. And that safety made the truth inside him even harder to hide. The room fell completely silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick more slowly. Ethan breathed in again, this time shakier, as if the words he had kept inside were right at the edge of escaping. Clara realized then that this wasn't about school or friendship or pressure. This was something personal to Ethan, deep and emotional, the kind of feeling a young man doesn't easily talk about. His eyes drifted back to hers with a quiet intensity that surprised her. There was vulnerability there, gratitude, and something unspoken that made her chest tighten with empathy rather than alarm. She softened her expression. "Ethan, whatever it is, you can tell me." For a moment, he looked like he might actually do it. His lips parted slightly. His eyes filled with the kind of emotion that comes only when someone has carried something alone for far too long. Clara felt her heartbeat rise, not out of fear, but because she sensed the moment turning into something significant. But just as Ethan opened his mouth, he stopped. He shut his eyes, breathed out sharply, and looked away, fighting back whatever was trying to surface. Clara didn't know if it was guilt, confusion, or heartbreak, but she knew it mattered. The moment was delicate, like a glass about to crack. Then the sound of a car door outside echoed through the quiet room. Ethan jerked slightly. His hands tightened. His breathing quickened. Clara looked toward the window, then back at him. "Is that Andrew?" she asked softly. Ethan didn't answer. He only nodded. And for the first time that evening, Clara understood. Whatever Ethan had been holding inside, whatever emotion he was struggling with, whatever truth he was moments away from revealing, had something to do with her dot, and the confession, when it finally came, would change the quiet rhythm of their home forever. Ethan didn't move after Andrew's car door slammed outside. He just sat frozen, staring at the floor as if his thoughts were louder than anything happening around him. Clara watched him carefully. He had never seen him like this, so tense, so unsure, so desperate to keep something inside and yet too overwhelmed to hold it much longer. She sat down again, leaning forward. "Ethan," she said quietly, "you're carrying something heavy. You don't have to hide it." Her voice broke the silence gently, like a soft hand pulling someone back from the edge. Ethan breathed in, and his chest rose shakily. He still didn't look at her. His fingers pressed together, then pulled apart, revealing the nervous energy rattling through him. Clara waited, giving him space instead of pressure. When he finally spoke, his voice barely held together. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Clara felt her heartbeat pick up. "What happened?" He closed his eyes for a moment before facing her. His expression held a mixture of fear and relief, as if saying the words out loud might either ruin everything or free him completely. "It's about you," he said, and the words came out like a weight dropping. Clara felt her breath catch, not in shock, but in understanding. The way he had acted around her lately made sense now. The long pauses, the nervous glances, the unusual quietness. The puzzle pieces rearranged themselves instantly, but she stayed calm. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed or misunderstood. "Go on," she said softly. Ethan finally met her eyes. His own eyes looked raw, vulnerable, like someone who had tried to fight his emotions and lost. "I know I shouldn't feel this way," he began. "I've tried to ignore it. I've tried to push it away. But every time I come here, it gets worse." Clara didn't speak. She wanted him to take his time. He continued with a trembling breath. "You've always been kind to me. Ever since Andrew and I were kids, you treated me like part of the family. And I didn't think anything of it back then. But this year, something changed. I started noticing things I shouldn't notice. I started feeling things I shouldn't feel." He looked startled by his own honesty, but the words kept coming, unstoppable now. "You're strong. You listen. You make people feel safe. I don't have that at home. My parents argue all the time. I come here to study, and the house feels warm. You ask if I've eaten. Do you care if I'm tired? And I started looking forward to being here more than anywhere else." Clara felt a soft ache. Inner chest not romantic, but sympathetic. Ethan wasn't confessing something inappropriate. He was confessing an emotional confusion the kind young adults often face when admiration and gratitude mix with growing feelings they don't fully understand. Ethan shook his head, ashamed. "I'm sorry, I know how this sounds. I know it's wrong. I know I'm just Andrew's friend. I shouldn't be saying any of this." Clara's voice was steady. "You're not doing anything wrong by feeling confused." Her gentle tone made tears gather at the corners of Ethan's eyes. Blinked quickly, trying to keep them from falling. "I didn't want you to think I was trying to make things weird. I didn't want to disrespect you or Andrew or your home. I just couldn't hold it in anymore." Clara felt a wave of compassion move through her. She had lived through enough in life to recognize true emotional turmoil. Ethan wasn't acting out of desire or impulse. He was acting from a place of deep, honest struggle. She placed her hands together in her lap and spoke calmly. "Ethan, emotions can get confusing, especially when life feels unstable. But what you're feeling doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're growing, and sometimes growing hurts." Ethan took a slow, painful breath. "I don't expect anything from you. I don't want anything to happen. I just needed to tell someone. I needed to tell you." Clara nodded gently. "Thank you for trusting me." That single sentence seemed to break him. A tear slipped down his cheek, and he quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "You don't need to apologize," she said firmly, but softly. "You've been carrying this alone. It must have been hard." Ethan nodded, looking relieved and guilty at the same time. "I didn't want you to think I saw you the wrong way. You're not. You know, some crush. It's not like that." Clara understood. "You admire me," she said gently. "And admiration can feel like something more when life gets confusing." Ethan swallowed. "Exactly." He sat back, shoulders sinking as if releasing months of tension. "I feel stupid now." "You're not stupid," Clara said. "You're human." He let out a shaky laugh, the first bit of lightness appearing in his expression. "I was scared you'd be angry." "Not angry," she assured him. "I'm glad you told me. Keeping this inside would only make things harder." Just then, footsteps approached outside the door, the unmistakable sound of Andrew coming inside. Ethan's entire body stiffened. He wiped his face quickly, straightened his posture, and tried to compose himself within seconds. Panic flashed through his eyes, not because he was guilty, but because he feared misunderstanding. Clara sensed it. "You don't have to say anything?" To him, she whispered. Ethan nodded quickly, grateful. The front door opened. "Hey." Andrew called casually as he walked in, holding 2 bags of snacks. "Sorry, I took forever." The line was insane. His cheerful voice filled the room, but Ethan couldn't look at him. He stared downward, shaking slightly. Andrew looked between them. "Whoa, did something happen?" "You guys look like you just had a serious talk." Clara smiled calmly. "We're just catching up. Nothing to worry about." Ethan tried to smile but failed. "Yeah, just talking." Andrew shrugged, not sensing anything unusual. "Well, good. I brought chips. Let's get started on our project." Clara watched Ethan carefully as he stood up. He didn't say anything, but his eyes met hers for a brief second filled with gratitude, confusion, and relief all at once. Whatever storm had been growing inside him had finally broken. And though the confession had changed, something between them forever. The moment had also brought clarity, honesty, and a quiet understanding neither of them would forget. Andrew's cheerful voice filled the living room, but the mood inside Ethan didn't lift. His confession still hung in the air like a fragile thread only Clara could see. He stood beside the couch, trying to steady his breathing while Andrew unpacked snacks, completely unaware of the emotional storm Ethan had just survived. Clara sensed Ethan's panic rising again. She gently stepped between the boys, creating a moment of separation so Ethan wouldn't feel trapped. Her calmness anchored him, though his nervous hands kept curling into fists. Andrew talked about their project plans, flipping open his laptop on the coffee table, but Ethan couldn't focus. Every word Andrew said felt distant, muffled, drowned under the weight of what he had just revealed. After a few minutes, Ethan whispered, "Clara, can I talk to you for a second?" Andrew looked up, surprised. "About the project?" "No, Ethan stopped, unable to finish. His voice was too shaky. Clara stepped in instantly. "We'll be right back." She guided Ethan toward the hallway, giving Andrew a reassuring smile. Andrew shrugged and returned to his laptop, unaware that something far more serious had shifted in the walls of the house. The moment they stepped into the hallway, Ethan leaned against the wall, his breathing uneven. Clara didn't touch him. She knew he didn't need comfort through physical contact, but through clarity and stability. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're overwhelmed. That's normal after opening up." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to regain control. "I shouldn't have told you," he said, voice breaking. "I messed everything up. I feel like I ruined our friendship. I should never have said anything." "You didn't ruin anything," Clara said firmly. "You were honest, and honesty is never wrong." "But Andrew," Ethan cut himself off, shaking his head. "If he ever finds out if he thinks I said something disrespectful about you, it'll destroy everything." Clara shook her head gently. "Ethan, you didn't disrespect me. You were vulnerable. Emotional confusion isn't disrespect. It's human." But Ethan was too shaken to hear the logic in her words. "I shouldn't be feeling what I feel. I know that. I know it's not right." Clara's voice stayed steady. "You're not doing anything wrong by having emotions. What matters is how you handle them. And talking instead of acting was the right choice." He looked down, shame coloring his face. "I don't want you to think I see you in some romantic way. It's not like that. It's just, you feel like a safe place, and I don't have that anywhere else. And I guess I confused that with something else." Clara's heart softened. Ethan wasn't confessing love. He was confessing loneliness. Life had pushed him into emotional corners he didn't know how to navigate. She took a breath. "Ethan, listen to me. What you're feeling is admiration mixed with comfort. It happens, especially when life is messy. But this can't turn into something bigger. You deserve someone who can grow with you, someone your age, someone building a life alongside you." He nodded slowly, tears fighting to escape again. "I know. And I care about you," Clara continued. "But I care about you as my son's friend. Someone I've watched grow up. Someone who deserves guidance, not guilt." Ethan closed his eyes, and for a long moment he didn't speak. His shoulders rose and fell as he tried to control the storm inside him. When he finally looked at her again, his voice was softer. "Thank you for not being angry." "There's nothing to be angry about," Clara replied. "You trusted me with something hard. That takes courage." Ethan breathed out, and the tremor in his hands slowly settled. Clara could see him calming, grounding, realizing that he wasn't being judged, mocked, or rejected in a cruel way. He was being guided back to steadiness. But just as the moment started to settle, Andrew called from the living room. "Hey, you guys okay?" That was a long minute. Ethan straightened immediately, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "Yeah, he shouted back, though his voice cracked. Clara touched his shoulder lightly, not affectionately, but supportively. "Take a breath before you go back in. You're okay?" He nodded again, inhaling deeply, then exhaling as if letting go of a great weight. "Thank you," he whispered. "Always," Clara replied. They walked back to the living room. Andrew didn't notice anything unusual, too focused on the project notes. He pushed a bag of chips toward Ethan. "Here, these are your favorite." The small gesture hit Ethan unexpectedly, and his eyes softened. He took the chips with a quiet, grateful smile, then sat down on the opposite side of the coffee table. Clara sat beside Andrew, giving Ethan space while also silently watching over him. The boys began discussing their project again, with Andrew leading the conversation. Ethan tried to keep up, His voice was steadier now, though his eyes carried a tiredness that hadn't been there before. Even so, there was a new calm about Emma's sense of release. Like he wasn't fighting himself anymore. After an hour, Andrew stretched and said he needed to grab something from his room. The moment he left, Clara looked at Ethan. "You're handling this well," she said softly. He nodded. "I feel lighter, even though it was terrifying." "That's what honesty does," Clara replied. Ethan let out a small laugh. "I really thought you were going to be upset. Or tell me to leave." "I would never do that," Clara said. "You're important to Andrew. And you matter to me, too. Just differently than the way you thought." He nodded again. Not disappointed, not heartbroken, just relieved. "You don't hate me?" he asked, as if still needing the reassurance. "No," Clara said immediately. "I don't hate you. And I don't think you did anything wrong by being honest." For the first time all night, Ethan met her gaze without fear. And in that moment, something settled between them, not romantic tension, not forbidden feelings, but understanding. Real, steady understanding. When Andrew came back, cheerful as ever, everything shifted back into normal rhythm. They worked on the project, joked lightly, and made plans for the next study session, but for Clara and Ethan. Something quiet and meaningful had changed. The confusion inside Ethan had been confronted. The anxiety inside Clara had eased. And the unspoken tension that had filled the room earlier was replaced with something far healthier - clarity. Yet neither of them knew there was still one more emotional moment waiting in the days ahead. A moment that would bring closure, neither expected, along with a final twist of the heart. For the next few days, the atmosphere settled back into something close to normal, at least on the surface. Andrew and Ethan continued their project, coming and going from the house with the same easy routine. But Clara could sense something quieter beneath Ethan's calm. His confession had freed him. Yes, but emotional clarity didn't erase feelings overnight. It only helped him face them. Clara gave him space. She didn't bring up the conversation again. She didn't hint at it. She simply treated him with the same steady warmth she always had, letting him guide his own recovery at his own pace. By midweek, the boys finished their school project. Andrew came home excited, announcing that he and Ethan planned to celebrate by grabbing dinner in town. Clara smiled and encouraged it. But when evening came, Ethan knocked gently on the kitchen doorway instead of leaving with Andrew. "Can we talk?" Ethan asked softly. Andrew, already grabbing his jacket, didn't notice the change in tone. "We'll be back in a bit," he said, heading toward the door. "Ethan, come on." "I'll meet you at the car," Ethan replied. Andrew nodded and left, humming to himself as he closed the door behind him. Suddenly, the house was quiet again, too quiet, in a way that reminded Clara of the night Ethan had first opened up. Ethan walked into the kitchen and stopped a few feet away from her. He looked calmer than before, but there was something serious in his eyes. Something final, like he had made peace with something, and was now ready to speak it aloud. Clara dried her hands on a towel. "What's on your mind?" Ethan took a breath. "I need closure." The words came out steady, not trembling like last time. Clara nodded, giving him permission to continue. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, pacing slowly. "About what I said, about how I felt, and about the way you responded." He looked up, gratitude softening his voice. "You were kind. You didn't shame me. You didn't make it awkward. You didn't make me feel small." Clara smiled gently. "You didn't deserve to feel small." He nodded. "I know. But most people wouldn't have handled it the way you did." That meant a lot. Paused, organizing his thoughts. "At first I thought talking to you would make the feelings go away immediately. But it didn't. They lingered. It's not the same confusion as before, but there's still a heaviness inside me." Clara listened carefully, understanding that this was the moment where healing either deepened or stalled. Ethan continued, "I realized something. The reason I felt so strongly wasn't because I was romantically drawn to you. It was because you were the only stable adult in my life. The only person who noticed when I was tired. The only one who asked how I was doing and actually cared about the answer. His voice shook slightly. I'm not used to being seen like that. Her heart softened. I'm glad I could be that for you. And this week, Ethan said, I started seeing it more clearly. What I was feeling wasn't love. It was longing. Longing for stability, for warmth, for support. And because you were the only place I found that. I confused it. Clara nodded. That's a normal thing to happen. Stepped closer, still leaving a respectful distance. You helped me understand that. And I needed that clarity. But I need something else too. What's that? Clara asked. Ethan took a steady breath. I need to move forward. I need to grow past this. And I need to stop depending on this house as my emotional shelter. He swallowed. Not because it's bad for me, but because it's too easy. Clara's chest tightened not from sadness, but from pride. She understood exactly what he meant. I'll still be around, he said quickly, not wanting her to misunderstand. I'm not disappearing. I'm not avoiding Andrew. I'm not running away from you. I just need to create space for myself, to build stability in my own life instead of borrowing yours. Clara stepped closer, her voice soft and warm. That's the strongest thing you've said yet. He smiled faintly. I thought you'd think I was being dramatic. Not at all, she said. You're being mature. You're recognizing what you need. Ethan breathed out, relieved. Good, because the truth is, I don't want to carry this anymore. I want to look at you without feeling guilty. I want to sit in this house without feeling confused. I want to be myself again. And you will be, Clara said. But Ethan's expression grew more serious. There's one more thing. Clara waited. I want to thank you, not just for listening to me, but for showing me what healthy emotional boundaries look like, for treating me with respect even when I was scared, for helping me understand myself better. His voice grew quiet. You didn't have to be that person for me, but you were. Clara felt the emotion of his words settle into the room like a warm glow. She spoke gently. Ethan, you grew through this. I just helped guide you. But you did the hard part yourself. He looked down, his eyes glistening. Still, thank you. Clara nodded, touched, then Ethan straightened, finally looking like someone who was ready to move forward. I'm going to be okay now. I know that. And I think the best thing for me is to take a small step back, not disappear, but give myself room to reset. That's healthy, Clara said, and it doesn't change anything between us. Ethan let out a soft breath. Good, I just needed to hear that, a honk echoed from outside Andrew. Growing impatient in the car, Ethan smiled one last time, clearer than he had been in weeks. I should go. He'll think I fell asleep in your pantry. Clara laughed lightly. Go on. Ethan turned to leave but paused at the doorway. Clara, yes, I promise. I'll be okay. And thank you again for everything. She smiled warmly. Take care of yourself, Ethan. He nodded, then stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. Clara stood still for a moment, letting the quiet settle. She wasn't sad. She wasn't worried. She felt proud of Ethan for facing something heavy with honesty, and proud that she had helped guide him through it safely and respectfully. Outside, she watched him climb into Andrew's car, laughing as Andrew immediately teased him for being slow. Ethan looked lighter, like someone who had finally set down a weight he'd been carrying for far too long, and as the car pulled away, Clara knew this chapter wasn't about forbidden feelings or hidden emotions. It was about growth, healing, maturity, and understanding. A story not about romance, but about clarity, courage, and closure. The kind that changes a young man forever and leaves an adult heart quietly grateful for having helped.